couple of weeks ago, the end of May, more than 350 rabbis, educators, cantors, scholars, and lay leaders gathered in New York for the third Re-CHARGING Reform Judaism Conference. They came with differing opinions, different experiences, no shortage of passionate debate. Yet, after 2 days of conversations, 4 resolutions emerged on Jewish peoplehood, Jewish education, spirituality and Jewish practice, and institutional innovation. These resolutions were not merely policy statements. They were, in many ways, spiritual questions. They asked not simply what kind of movement do we want, but what kind of Jews do we hope to become? I would like to suggest that these 4 resolutions correspond to 4 ancient Jewish questions. Who are we? What do we teach? How do we pray? And how do we build for our future? The first resolution speaks about Jewish peoplehood and the bonds that unite Jews across geography, ideology, and Lador Vador generations. It emphasizes Zionism and the enduring connection between the Jewish people and the state of Israel, and calls for future leaders to possess a deep commitment to both the Jewish state and the Jewish people. But the deeper question beneath that resolution is this: do we still believe that being Jewish means belonging to something larger than ourselves? The Torah begins not with individuals, but with families. Abraham is promised not personal fulfillment, but descendants. Moses does not lead spiritual seekers, he leads a people. Judaism has always insisted that holiness is found not only in private experience, but in our shared destiny. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel famously wrote, "No one is an island." Perhaps Paul Simon did the same. Judaism would add, "No Jew is an island." In an age that celebrates radical individualism, Jewish peoplehood reminds us that we inherit obligations as well as rights. We belong to Jews that have never met and to generations not yet born. The Mishnah teaches, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, all Israel is responsible for one another. And responsibility is not always easy. Family never is. But belonging is one of God's greatest gifts. The conference's second resolution focuses on strengthening Hebrew literacy, Israel education, and the preparation of future clergy and educators. It recognizes that Jewish continuity cannot survive on sentiment alone. There's an old joke that every Jewish parent wants their child to know enough Judaism to marry another Jew and then hopes someone else will teach them the rest. But Jewish identity built only on nostalgia cannot endure. As Moses tells us, "V'shinantam levanecha," you shall teach them diligently to your children. Notice that Moses does not say you should feel Jewish. He says you shall teach them, because memory requires language. Love requires knowledge. Tradition requires transmission. Our ancestors survived not because they had power, but because they had stories. Babylon could destroy the temple, and Rome could destroy Jerusalem, but neither could destroy the Torah being taught around the kitchen tables. Jewish learning has never been a luxury. It's always been our survival strategy. And perhaps that's true not only for children. Some of the most important Jewish learning happens later in life. The Talmud tells us that Rabbi Akiva began studying at age 40. Imagine that. One of the greatest teachers of Judaism began as an adult beginner. Perhaps some of us need to hear that. It's never too late to become more Jewish than we were yesterday. The conference also called for renewed attention to spirituality and Jewish practice. In an era of anxiety and distraction, it emphasized awe, prayer, and meaningful Jewish living. This may be the most countercultural resolution of all, because our world is filled with information, but it is hungry for wisdom. Connected yet lonely. Our world is busy yet spiritually exhausted. The psalmist asks, "One thing I seek, to dwell in the house of the Eternal all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of God." Notice, not 10 things, not endless notifications, not productivity. One thing: to behold, to notice, to wonder. The rabbis understood that spirituality is not merely about beliefs, it's about practices. Lighting candles, saying blessing, keeping Shabbat, gathering in your community, singing together, pausing long enough to remember that we are souls, not machines. Rabbi Angela Buchdahl's keynote at the conference centered on awe and the spiritual future of Judaism. And that word, awe, may be one of the most important words of our time, because cynicism is easy. Wonder requires courage. Abraham looked at the stars and was astonished. Moses saw a bush that burned without being consumed. Isaiah beheld the heavens and cried, "Holy, holy, holy." Perhaps God has not become absent. Perhaps we have become distracted. And perhaps Judaism's task is not to invent new souls, but to awaken the sleeping ones. The final resolution concerns innovation and reimagining Jewish institutions for the future. It asks how synagogues, movements, communities can adapt to changing realities while remaining rooted in enduring values. Innovation can sound frightening. After all, Judaism treasures tradition. But Judaism has always changed. Prayer replaced sacrifice. The synagogue replaced the temple. The Siddur evolved. The Talmud itself represents centuries of adaptation. The rabbis, after the destruction of the Second Temple, could have said everything is lost. Instead, they asked, how shall we serve God now? That question saved Judaism. Not how do we preserve the past unchanged, but how do we carry the past forward? There's a beautiful midrash that says when Moses visited Rabbi Akiva's classroom centuries in the future, he could not understand what was being taught. Yet when Rabbi Akiva explained that these teachings ultimately came from Sinai, Moses was comforted. Even Moses did not recognize what Judaism would become, and yet the chain remained unbroken, and that is innovation. Not abandoning Sinai, extending Sinai. In truth, were these 4 resolutions really 4 questions? Will we belong? Will we learn? Will we seek holiness? Will we build? Because these are not merely questions for institutions, they're questions for every one of us. Will we deepen our connection to the Jewish people? Will we commit ourselves to learning? Will we make room for prayer, wonder, sacred time? Will we help shape communities that future generations will want to inherit? Because Reform Judaism has never been simply about changing Judaism. At its best, Reform Judaism has been about renewing Judaism, and renewal is one of the great themes of our tradition. Every week, Shabbat returns. Every month, the moon is renewed. Every year, we stand before the high holy days and begin again. The prophet Isaiah declares, "Hineni oseh chadasha." Behold, I am doing a new thing. God is always creating, and perhaps God asks the same of us. Not to preserve Judaism in amber, not to surrender Judaism to the winds of fashion, but to become faithful partners in the ongoing work of renewal. For ours is a tradition that believes that the future is not something that happens to us. The future is something we are called to build. And if we can strengthen our sense of peoplehood, deepen our learning, rediscover the life of the Spirit, and build communities capable of carrying Torah into the generations ahead, then perhaps the work begun at that conference in May will not simply recharge Reform Judaism. Perhaps it will help to renew the Jewish people itself. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will.